The skyline of Charleston shimmered under the haze of a low country sunset, a golden wash stretching across the cobblestone streets and lazy rooftops below. From 32 stories up, it looked almost still like a painting waiting to be. Signed, Graham Whitmore stood at the edge of the rooftop terrace of the Whitmore building, a structure of steel and smoked glass that pierced the sky with his name etched into the stone like a signature of success. The city moved slowly beneath him, but up here, everything was elegant, controlled, just like his life. He adjusted the knot on his Italian silk tie, then loosened it again. Perfect fit, perfect view. But the reflection in the glass wasn't perfect. Not anymore. His phone buzzed on the patio table behind him. A message lit up the screen. Final tasting at 6. Celeste wants your input on the amuse-bouche. He didn't reply. Instead, Graham leaned on the cold railing and exhaled, his breath catching in the warm air. At 38, he had everything he'd worked for, architectural awards stacked in the penthouse office, spreads in design magazines, a condo that smelled like teakwood and lemon oil. And in 6 days, he would marry Celeste Harrow, Charleston's social crown jewel, daughter of Todd Harrow, the real estate magnate whose name alone opened every locked door in the city, but none of it filled the widening hollow in his chest. He turned back toward the table, toward the heavy envelope resting beside his untouched drink, cream-colored cardstock, handwritten in soft blue ink. Just her name on the front, Lena Carrington. It looked out of place here, something organic, personal, alive. He hadn't sent it, not yet. Not after all these years. 7 years since he left. 7 years since he traded sketch pads on her back. Porch for skyscrapers in Dubai. 7 years since he told her he had to go. That ambition meant moving forward, never looking back. And yet, here it was again. The ache, the question, the feeling that something had been left unfinished. He picked it up. She had always signed her letters with a flourish, a small star above the I in Carrington. He ran his thumb over the ink, wondered if she still did that. Wondered if she still thought about that night, the magnolia tree, the warm air, the way her voice cracked when she whispered, "Just don't leave me wondering, Graham." But he had. For 7 years, he'd left her wondering. The elevator behind him dinged. Turned, Caroline stepped onto the terrace, clipboard under one arm, her rust-red wrap dress catching the late sun. She was already mid-conversation before she reached him. "You didn't answer. Celeste is waiting. She's got the florist lined up and the seating chart needs your signature." He didn't move. Caroline followed his gaze to the envelope. Her voice dropped. "You're still thinking about sending it?" Graham's jaw tightened. "I don't know. I guess I just want her to know that I didn't forget." Caroline stepped beside him, arms crossed, eyes scanning the horizon before turning to him. "You're marrying someone else, Graham." "I know, and inviting your ex to watch it happen." She tilted her head. "What are you really hoping for?" He was quiet for a long time. Then, almost to himself, "It's not about her being there. It's about not pretending like she didn't matter." Silence. Then Caroline reached forward, picked up the envelope, and set it beside his phone. "Then send it, or don't. But don't use it to punish yourself." She left. The sun had dipped lower now, casting long shadows across the city as the hum of the streets below quieted into twilight. Graham stood alone again, fingers brushing the edge of the envelope. Later that night, long after the building had emptied and the city had gone still, Graham sat at his drafting table. Blueprints for the new Harrow waterfront marina lay across. The The surface, flawless lines, precision renderings, sterile beauty. It was perfect and lifeless. His mind drifted, not to Celeste, not to the reception tent going up at Middleton Place, but to the Carrington garden on James Island, to Lena, to the way she used to press her forehead against his when they argued too, the way she always smelled faintly of basil and rainwater, to the night she whispered, Asterisk, just don't leave me wondering. Asterisk he had, and now he couldn't stop wondering himself. The next morning, the city bloomed awake in slow motion, humidity clinging to the streets, church bells echoing faintly through the moss-draped trees. Somewhere miles away, in a neighborhood Graham hadn't driven through in years, Lena Carrington stood ankle-deep in soil, her gloved hands pulling weeds from the north plot of the Harmony garden. Sunlight spilled across her back. Children's laughter echoed from the nearby beds. A small boy held up a crooked carrot with pride. Miss Lena, look what I found. She smiled, brushing soil from her cheek. That's a fine-looking carrot, Eli. Let's wash it off and see how it tastes. This life wasn't glamorous, but it was real, tangible, rooted. And then, Mama, a small voice from behind. A girl, 6 years old, wild curls, a missing front tooth, running barefoot, waving something in her hand. This was in the mailbox. Lena knelt down, wiping her hands on her jeans. The envelope was thick. No return address. Her name, handwritten, her breath caught. She knew the handwriting, knew it before she turned it over, knew it before she slid her thumb under the seal and pulled out an ivory wedding invitation. Graham Whitmore, Celeste Harrow invite you to celebrate their union, ... The words blurred. Years of silence. No calls, no letters. And now this. Ava tugged her sleeve. Are you sad? Lena folded the invitation a little. The girl tilted her head, thoughtful. Is he the friend you talked about ... when I asked where my daddy was? The question landed like a stone dropped in still water. Lena looked at her daughter. A pause. I think maybe ... he was. That night, the garden lights flickered like stars. On the porch, Lena sat in quiet stillness. The invitation rested in her lap. Her mother, Martha, emerged with 2 cups of tea. I saw the mail, she said gently. I figured you did. You going? I don't know. Martha sat beside her, the wood creaking. You don't owe him anything. I know. But sometimes ... Lena's voice trailed off. Martha sipped her tea. Sometimes the heart needs to see things through, even when the mind says don't. Lena looked toward the sky. What if it's a mistake? Martha smiled faintly. Then let it be the last. 1. Lena glanced down at the invitation. Her fingers trembled. I think I need to see him. And somewhere far away, in a tall glass tower overlooking the harbor, Graham Whitmore stood at his window again, unaware that the question he had carried for 7 years ... was finally on its way to an answer. And that answer had green eyes, curly hair, and a name he had never heard. Ava Grace. The morning sun kissed the edge of the Harmony garden, casting soft shadows across the rows of kale, sunflowers, and thyme. Lena Carrington moved among the beds like someone who belonged there, gloved hands brushing against stems, sleeves rolled, hair tied back loosely beneath a faded scarf. She had built this place with nothing but grants, donated seeds, and the kind of grit you only earn when life leaves you no other option. It was honest work. Dirt under the nails, back-aching work. But here, in this little patch of green carved from a forgotten city lot, things grew, tangibly, reliably, and in the 6 years since Ava Grace was born, Lena had come to measure her life, not in time, but in harvests. Today, however, her rhythm was off. The invitation sat on the kitchen table, unopened again after last night's conversation. She had read it once, and once was enough. Graham Whitmore was getting married. To Celeste Harrow, no less. It wasn't a shock, not really. Not after all this time. Not after the silence. But the envelope, the handwriting, it hit different. Mama, Ava's voice echoed through the house. In the garden, Lena called back, her heart tightening in her chest. Ava came sprinting barefoot down the path, cheeks pink from sleep and sun. She held up a small yellow flower like it was treasure. For you, Lena took it, tucking it gently behind her ear. Thank you, sunshine. Ava beamed, then glanced toward the kitchen window. Are you gonna answer the letter? Lena blinked. What do you mean? The fancy one on the table. Lena hesitated. It's not that kind of letter, Ava tilted her head. Then why does it look so important? Because it was, Lena thought. But she didn't say it. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded tissue. Want to help me harvest the basil? Only if I can keep the snails this time, Ava grinned. They worked in silence, the morning filled with the hum of cicadas and the squeals of children nearby. But inside Lena's chest, a different sound echoed, that voice she hadn't heard in years. The one that used to whisper dreams against her neck in the quiet hours. Graham, she remembered the way he used to sit cross-legged on the back porch, sketching their dream house, all wildflowers and wrap-around swings. The way he'd said, I don't want a big life. I want a full one. And then he left. Chose the big life, the skyline, the success, and she had stayed, with swollen ankles, and silence, and a heartbeat that had to learn how to move on. Mama, Ava said suddenly, if we went to the wedding, would there be cupcakes? Lena froze, dirt clinging to her gloves. Ava went on, completely innocent. They always have cupcakes in the books. Weddings always have cupcakes and bubbles. Lena laughed once, short and surprised. Probably, she said. Later, after Ava had gone inside for lunch and the garden had settled into its midday hush, Lena found herself standing in front of the mirror. She looked older than she remembered. Not tired, exactly, just weathered, like something that had been through a storm and was still standing. She reached for the envelope again, fingered the thick cards. Read her name, Lena Carrington. It looked strange, formal, like someone she used to be. She slipped it back into the drawer, just as her mother walked into the room. You thinking about going? Martha asked. Lena sighed. It's crazy, right? Martha shrugged. You tell me. I don't want to stir anything up. I don't want drama, but, her voice faltered. But part of you still wants answers, Martha finished. Yes. Martha crossed her arms. You don't owe him anything. Lena, you built a life. You did the hard part. Alone, Lena looked at her, eyes wet. I know, but I also know I never stopped wondering. She thought of the nights she spent awake. Ava's tiny breath curled against her side, wondering if Graham had moved on, if he'd ever thought about her, about them, wondering if he knew, if he even cared. Martha stepped closer, voice softening. Then go, for yourself, not for him. Lena nodded, slow and unsure. And take the good dress, Martha added. Not the garden one. By late afternoon, Lena had packed a modest overnight bag, just in case. She told herself she was going out of curiosity, out of closure, that it wasn't about feelings, that Ava didn't need a father, that she didn't need anything. And yet, when Ava asked, "Where are we going, Mama?" Lena didn't lie, to see an old friend. Ava's eyes lit up. "Will there be cupcakes?" "Maybe," Lena smiled softly. They drove into Charleston just as the sky began to turn gold. The Harrow estate emerged like something from a bridal magazine, manicured. Massive, intimidating. Ava pressed her face against the window. Whoa, rows of white chairs had already been arranged on the back lawn. A glass marquee shimmered near a reflecting pond. Gardeners clipped hedges with surgeon-like precision. Staff moved like ghosts in pressed khaki and pastels. Lena's stomach twisted. "This is something else," she murmured. "Do you see cupcakes yet?" Ava asked hopefully. "Not yet." They stepped out of the car. Lena smoothed the skirt of her soft blue dress. She held Ava's hand like a lifeline as they crossed the lawn quietly, almost invisibly. And then a voice, "Lena." It hit her like thunder. She turned. Graham Whitmore stood near the edge of the tent, his suit jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled. His eyes locked onto hers, then dropped to Ava, then widened, and in that instant, the world fell away. He took a step forward, so did Ava, peeking from behind Lena's legs. "Hi," she said softly. Graham's voice cracked as he knelt. "Hi." Lena's throat closed. He looked up at her, eyes searching. "Lena, is she?" Lena held his gaze. "She's Ava Grace." No confirmation, no explanation, just a name. But it wrapped around his chest like rope. The air turned to still, and then another voice. "There you are, Celeste." She stepped out from the tent, flawless in linen and designer polish, her voice clipped, her eyes sharp and now locked on Lena. "Who's this?" Lena stood straighter. "I'm Lena, old friend of Graham's." Celeste offered a thin smile. Likewise, the moment froze, pulsed, shifted. Graham's voice was quiet. "Celeste, this is Ava Grace." Celeste's eyebrows lifted. Lovely name, but her eyes never left Lena. "We won't stay long," Lena said, placing a gentle hand on Ava's shoulder. "Just came to wish you well." "You're leaving?" Graham asked. Lena nodded. "I think I've seen enough." Celeste stepped forward, lips poised. "That's probably for the best." Lena turned without another word, walking slowly, Ava's small hand in hers. Graham stood frozen, the sound of their footsteps growing softer but echoing louder than anything else, because in that moment he knew his life was no longer what he thought, and somewhere deep in his chest something finally broke open. Graham didn't sleep that night. The Harrow estate was silent, the weight of expectation pressing down like humidity on his skin. He sat on the edge of the bed, still dressed from earlier, hands resting on his knees. Across the room, Celeste moved quietly, her robe tied tightly, her hair unpinned with careful precision. Her tablet glowed on the nightstand. "You're back late," she said without looking at him. "Your mother was asking about the wine list." Graham didn't answer. He stared down at the floorboards, polished and perfect, like the rest of this house, like the wedding that was unraveling before it even began. Celeste finally glanced up. "What's wrong with you?" He hesitated. "Did you know Lena had a child?" Fingers paused on the screen. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture did barely. She mentioned something, years ago, a daughter. I didn't think it was relevant. Graham stood slowly. She has my eyes. Celeste rose from the bed. Graham, she said sharply. She has my eyes, he repeated, more quietly this time. So what are you saying? That you're her father, based on eye color? Am I saying I think I need to find out? Celeste folded her arms. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You're serious? A week before our wedding, you want to entertain this? She's not just someone from my past. And that child might be mine. Celeste laughed once, but there was no humor in it. You're throwing away everything. No, Graham said. I'm trying to figure out what I already threw away. She stared at him, stunned. Her face shifted, cold, composed. Fine, she said. But don't expect me to smile through it. She disappeared into the dressing room, heels clicking softly on the hardwood. Graham remained still. Outside, dawn pressed gently against the sky, a dull blue glow creeping across the edge of the horizon. Across town, Lena stood at her kitchen sink, a glass of water in her hand. She hadn't slept either. Her mother leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You okay? Lena nodded. But her silence said more. I saw his face, Martha continued. At the estate, he didn't know. No, you think he deserves to. Lena turned slowly, her eyes glassy. I think I don't know what I think. Martha stepped forward, resting a hand on her daughter's shoulder. You've done right by Ava. Always. But now that door's open, and you need to decide what you're going to do with it. Lena looked down at her hands, the same hands that had pulled weeds, cooked dinners, held a child through fevers and storms. I'm scared. Of what? Of her getting hurt. Of me getting hurt. Of opening something I spent years burying. You can't keep burying something that's still breathing. Lena turned toward the window. The morning was breaking soft and slow, like it knew something important had shifted. Later that afternoon, Graham stood outside the garden gate of the Harmony Project, unsure if he should knock or just walk in. He could hear children laughing. The air smelled like mint and fresh soil. He pushed the gate gently out there. Near the compost bins was Lena. She wore jeans and a loose shirt, gloves on her hands, hair tied back under a red scarf, a smudge of dirt on her cheek. She hadn't seen him yet. She looked like home. He stepped forward. The gravel crunched beneath his shoes. She turned Graham. Hey, he said, voice rough from a night of no sleep. I wasn't sure if I should come. You're here, she said, brushing her gloves on her jeans. So now what? Can we talk? She nodded, leading him to a small wooden shed at the edge of the garden. The air inside was warm, smelling of rosemary and cedar. She leaned against a workbench. He stood near the door. I wasn't expecting to see you again, she said. I didn't expect any of this. Graham, is she mine? Lena's jaw tightened, but her voice was calm. You really want the truth? I need it. Yes, the word landed heavy. Graham leaned back, breath catching. Why didn't you tell me? I tried. You were in Dubai. Your assistant screened my calls. I sent letters. One came back marked refused. He winced. I figured, she said, that you'd made your choice. I didn't know. I know that now. He stepped closer. Why show up now? Why accept the invitation? I wasn't going to. But when I saw it, something in me needed to see you, to see if you'd look at her and recognize the truth. I did. They stood in silence. 7 years of words, unspoken between them. I missed everything, he said softly. Her first steps, first words. I was the one who had to tell her bedtime stories. About a faceless dad who lived somewhere far away. He reached into his pocket and unfolded a small, crumpled sheet of paper. It was a sketch, Ava, from memory. Her curls, her smile, the tilt of her head. I drew this last night. I couldn't sleep. Lena took it, fingers trembling. You never stopped drawing, only the important things. She looked up at him, eyes softening, but her voice steady. I don't know what you think this is, Graham. But she's not a second chance. She's a whole life, I know. Then don't walk in and out like it's a gallery. I'm not walking out. Not again. Lena didn't flinch. She handed back the sketch, holding his gaze. Then start showing up. She walked past him, back into the sunlight of the garden, and this time Graham followed. Graham showed up the next morning with a paper bag in one hand and a drink tray balanced in the other. His jacket was wrinkled, his hair tousled, his shoes dusty. He looked like a man who had walked out of one life and hadn't quite figured out how to enter the next dot. Lena opened the front door, eyebrows raised. You actually brought breakfast. Eggs with cheese, he said, lifting the bag, and a blueberry muffin. I wasn't sure about the muffin. Ava peeked around her mother's leg, her curls sticking out in every direction. Hi, again, Graham said, smiling. Hi, she grinned. Want to see my boat drawing? I'd love to. They moved to the porch, the morning sun casting warm light across the wood. The garden shimmered, dew still clinging to the leaves. Lena handed him a mug of coffee and sat across from him, arms folded. I'm not ready to talk about custody or legal things or labels. I understand. But I also can't pretend you don't exist anymore, and she's not a puzzle piece you get to fit into your timeline when it's convenient. I'm not here to fit. I'm here to build. Build what? Graham looked toward Ava as she ran barefoot through the grass, waving her drawing like a flag. Something honest. Lena's voice softened, but her eyes didn't. You're going to need more than muffins for that. I brought orange juice too. She laughed once, then caught herself, but he noticed. He always noticed. I don't trust easily, she said. Then I'll keep showing up. Later, after breakfast, dishes had been cleared and Ava had gone inside to color. Lena stood at the sink while Graham leaned on the counter beside her. She asked the question that had been sitting between them since the garden. Why did you really leave? He stared out the window. I told myself it was ambition, that I needed to chase something bigger, and the truth. His voice dropped. I think I was afraid. Afraid of what? Of how much I felt for you, of being ordinary, of being enough, of choosing you and then failing anyway. You never even said goodbye, Graham. You just disappeared. I thought silence would be kinder than admitting I was weak. Lena looked at him, her jaw set, but her voice stayed even. It wasn't kinder. It was just quiet pain, I know. Outside, Ava called from the porch. Daddy, can we go to the park? Today, the word hit them both like a strike of thunder. Daddy. Lena froze. Graham didn't. He walked toward her and knelt. If it's okay with your mum, I'd love to. Lena looked down. Her heart was a steady hammer in her chest. Then slowly, carefully, she nodded once. Just once. The park smelled like spring, fresh-cut grass, warm bark, and the light sweetness of honeysuckle drifted through the breeze. Ava darted ahead, toward the wooden play structure, her curls bouncing with every step. Graham and Lena sat on a bench near the gravel path. He held a coffee cup in his hands. She watched their daughter with careful eyes. She always this fast? He asked only when she's excited. Or has a new audience? Graham looked at her. I still can't believe she's real. She's always been real, Graham. You just weren't looking. He nodded, absorbing the edge in her words. I keep thinking about everything I missed. Her first birthday. Her first word, it was Mama, Lena said. But she said it to a goldfish. He laughed, a surprised open sound. Lena smiled briefly before looking away. And when did you know that you were going to do it alone? Lena's voice lowered. The night I didn't hear back from you after I left that message. I sat on the back steps for hours. I told myself maybe the time difference was the problem. Maybe you'd call. She paused, but you didn't. His throat tightened. Didn't even know you called. I spoke to your assistant once. She said you were unavailable. Graham's hands curled into fists, then relaxed. I'm sorry, I know. Ava ran back to them, cheeks flushed, pointing to a small lumpy castle in the sandbox. That's our house, she said proudly. Me, you, and Mummy. We live in it forever. Graham looked at the sandcastle, then back at Lena. She was watching him, but something in her face had changed. Her guard was still up, but there was softness around the edges. That softness didn't last long. Behind them, a voice sliced through the warm afternoon. Well, this is a charming scene, Celeste. She stood in a tailored blush coat and heels that didn't belong on gravel. Her arms were crossed, her eyes unreadable. Graham stood. Celeste, what are you doing here? I had a board meeting near the marina. I was driving home, thought I'd take the scenic route. She looked at Ava, then Lena. Imagine my surprise. Lena stepped forward calmly. You're welcome to join us. There's plenty of sand. I'm good, thanks. Her eyes landed on Ava again. She's adorable. Her name is Ava Grace. Graham said. Celeste's voice stayed even. Is that so? She looked at Graham. So this is what's been keeping you up at night, I told. You, I needed time, Graham replied. And this is how you spend it. Playing house in a public park. Lena's voice was low and firm. You don't get to speak about her like that. Celeste didn't move. You had 7 years. Why now? Because I didn't know, Graham said. And now that I do, I'm not walking away. Celeste's jaw clenched. So what does this mean? The wedding's off. Or are you hoping I'll smile while you build a second family on the side? I don't have the answers yet, but I know I owe them more than silence. Celeste blinked once, then recovered. She turned. You're not the man I thought you were. You're right. She left without another word. Lena stood still, her heart hammering. I'm sorry, Graham said. Don't be sorry for showing up. Just be sure you're ready to stay. He nodded. Then she asked almost too quietly to hear. Do you still have the swing sketch? The one from our old porch? He blinked. I think I do. Why? Because I'm wondering if it's time to build another one. They sat together in silence. Ava's laughter carrying through the air like a thread, and somewhere between yesterday and tomorrow, something fragile had begun again. The next morning, Graham knocked on Lena's door at 8:57 a.m., breakfast in hand and nerves in his throat. He wore jeans this time, a soft jacket and no tie. When Lena opened the door, he held up the brown paper bag like a peace offering. Eggs with cheese, he said, and orange juice, and 1 blueberry muffin. Just in case. She raised an eyebrow. You're early, you said 9. I got nervous. Ava peeked from behind her mum, already grinning. She bolted toward Graham with a crayon-smudged sheet of paper. Look, look. I drew you again. He knelt as she held up the page. A boat, a flag, 3 stick figures. That's me and Mummy, and that's you on the boat. You said we might go one day. Graham smiled as his heart thudded. I can't wait. They settled on the porch. The swing ropes creaked gently in the breeze, empty for now, but waiting. Lena sat across from him, her arms crossed. Ava hummed at the little table, arranging stuffed animals like breakfast guests. Lena's voice was calm, but there was a tightness beneath it. I don't want to talk about big things today. No plans, no decisions, just breakfast, that's all. I want to dot. Ava giggled as she poured imaginary tea into her bear's cup. Mr. Stripey says, you're funny, she announced. Is that so? Graham said. I better stay on his good side. After breakfast, Ava climbed into Graham's lap, sticky with syrup, and full of stories. He listened to every word, every ramble, every wrong turn in the plot. Lena watched from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel, a strange weight in her chest. Later, as the sun rose higher, she drove them to the Saturday market. Ava held Graham's hand without hesitation. People stared. She felt it, the looks, the whispers. They saw a man who had once vanished and now walked beside a woman and child like he'd always been there. Lena kept her chin high at a flower stand. Ava asked the vendor what color smelled. Like happy. The woman, her face lined with wisdom, handed her a yellow marigold. That's for happy love, she said. Ava turned to Graham. I'm gonna plant one for us. Graham looked at Lena. She didn't meet his eyes. Back at the house, Ava napped, curled on the couch, one hand gripping Mr. Stripey. Graham stepped onto the porch. Lena joined him, folding her arms. She loves being with you. I love being with her. She trusts easily, but she remembers deeply. He nodded, and you. I remember even more. They stood in silence until Lena spoke again, eyes fixed on the horizon. Celeste came by yesterday. Graham stiffened. What did she want? She didn't say much. Just left something. Lena pulled a thick envelope from her cardigan. His name was written on the front. He opened it slowly. Inside a single sheet. It's done. Tell your board when you're ready. He blinked. She pulled out of the firm. Lena said. He folded the letter, sliding it back inside. She didn't deserve that ending, neither did I. That end, the air turned still again. I'm not asking you to forgive me overnight, Graham said. But I'm not here to repeat my mistakes. I'm here for the long part, the hard part. She looked at him, searching for a crack, a sign of weakness. What does that even mean? It means I'll be here when it's messy, when she's sick, when she cries over school, when you need space, when it's boring, when it's real. Lena looked away, blinking fast. That sounds like love. It is. I'm not ready for that answer. I'm not asking for one yet. Inside, Ava stirred. The crayon she'd been using rolled off the table, clattering to the floor. She reached for it, then looked up. Daddy, can we go to the park again? Lena froze. Graham didn't flinch. He knelt beside her. If it's okay with your mum, I'd love to. Lena looked down, her breath shallow, and then, quietly, she nodded. Just once. The park smelled like spring again, softer this time, like something settling. in Ava raced to the jungle gym. Lena and Graham walked behind her, not touching but not distant. "She's fast today," Graham said. "You're slow today," he laughed. They sat on a bench while Ava drew pictures in the dirt with a stick. "I had a meeting this morning," Graham said. "Yeah, I resigned." Lena turned to face him. "You what?" "I stepped away from the board. Sold my shares. It was time." She stared at him. "That company was your legacy." "No, my absence was my legacy." He turned toward Ava. "I want something different now. You can't just walk away from everything you built." "I'm not walking away. I'm walking towards something better." Lena swallowed. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. I'll consult here and there, enough to stay afloat. But I want to be present. I want to raise our daughter. I want to figure out if this thing between you and me has a second chapter." She looked down. "You're rebuilding your life from the ground up. I have too. The foundation I laid before was all wrong." She didn't answer right away. Ava called to them, holding a stick like a microphone. "Mummy, Daddy, watch this." They watched. She sang a song only she understood. Lena wiped her eyes before the tears could fall at the house. Martha stood at the window, watching Graham help Ava water the basil. He was soaked. She was squealing. Lena came in, her hands full of herbs. "He's still here," Martha said. "For now, he's helping." "He is." Martha looked at her. "You've got that look." "What look?" "The one you had before you told me you were pregnant. The look that says you're already in deeper than you want to admit." Lena sat at the kitchen table. "I never really stopped." Martha sat beside her. "Just promise me one thing, anything, when your heart says it's time to choose. Make sure you're choosing for you, not just for her." Lena nodded. "I hear you." Outside, the swing creaked. Ava laughed. Graham caught her before she fell, and Lena thought maybe, just maybe, she was ready to begin again. The morning of the wedding rehearsal broke warm and bright. Charleston wrapped in gold and stillness before the storm at the Harrow estate. Staff buzzed like bees in pressed pastel uniforms, setting tables, trimming hedges, rearranging place cards for the third time. Rows of ivory chairs faced the reflecting pond like soldiers. A string quartet tuned in the distance. Graham stood on the veranda, staring at the flawless setup. It was everything he'd once wanted. Precision, elegance, perfection, but he felt nothing. Celeste stepped out behind him, her linen dress untouched by sweat, her phone already glued to one hand. "Your florist needs confirmation on the centerpieces," she said without looking up. "And my father says the Langstons can't sit near the McKennas." Graham didn't answer. Celeste glanced at him, eyes narrowing slightly. "Graham." He turned, slowly. "Do you ever wonder what any of this is really for?" Celeste blinked. "Excuse me, this wedding, the tent, the wine pairings, the 9-tier cake." She tilted her head. Her tone softened just enough to seem caring. "We're building something important here. A name, a future. This is a partnership. And it works, doesn't it?" Graham said nothing. The silence said enough. Celeste's phone buzzed. She gave him a tight smile, leaned in, kissed his cheek. "Don't overthink it. We're almost there." She turned and walked back inside, but Graham stayed on the veranda, his eyes drifting beyond the property, past the glimmering pond, to a memory. He couldn't shake the old swing on the Carrington porch, squeaking as Lena leaned against his chest, asking if he ever thought about building something slower, something real. Now, it was all noise. Later, at the rehearsal dinner, guests mingled over bourbon and peach cocktails. The air smelled of jasmine, laughter, and nerves. Graham sat at the long table, untouched plate in front of him. Across the way, Celeste charmed a historical society couple. Down the line, Caroline leaned in. "You've barely eaten." Graham didn't answer. "You saw her again, didn't you?" He stared ahead. Caroline sighed. "You need to tell Celeste. Before this gets worse. It's already complicated. She's your daughter." The words echoed louder than the string. Quartet. Graham glanced down the table to Todd Harrow, booming with laughter. Beside a senator, as if nothing in his life could ever be unsettled. He didn't belong at that table anymore. His phone buzzed. A text from Lena. "She's drawing you again. This time with a boat." He read it twice. 3 times. Caroline saw the look in his eyes and leaned back. She already knew. The next morning, Lena opened the door to find him standing there, holding breakfast. "Again, you're back," she said. "Didn't want to lose my spot," he replied. She let him in. Ava ran up immediately. "You missed my new picture." She held up a sketch. Graham, on a swing this time, holding her hand. "Can we go to the market again today?" "Only if I'm in charge of the tiger," he said. "Mr. Stripey never gets lost," Ava promised. Charleston's Saturday market unfurled along. The waterfront in full bloom, flower vendors, musicians, honey stands, kids with sticky fingers and sunburned noses. They walked like a family. Lena tried not to notice the stares, tried to breathe past the weight of what people thought they saw. A man, a woman, a child, a second chance. She told herself not to lean in, not yet. Back at the house, Ava napped on the couch again, worn out by excitement. Lena and Graham sat outside. "On the porch, she loves being around you," Lena said. "I love being around her." "And you," Lena said nothing. She reached into her cardigan, pulled out the envelope Celeste had left days ago. "I figured you should see this." He opened it. A single sentence in Celeste's handwriting. "It's done. Tell your board when you're ready." Graham stared at it. She didn't deserve that kind of ending. He murmured, "Neither did I." They sat in silence. Graham finally looked at her. "I'm not asking you to forgive me overnight. I just need you to know I'm here. For real, I know." Later that night, the wedding guests gathered under lanterns and chandeliers of Spanish moss. The ancient oak stood waiting. The aisle sparkled with carefully placed petals. Graham stood at the edge, heart pounding. Ava sat in the front row beside Caroline. Lena beside her, still, quiet. The organ music began. The first bridesmaid, then the second, then Celeste. She walked gracefully, a vision in silk and restraint. Her eyes flicked to him, then to the crowd, then to Lena. Graham looked back at Ava. She was sitting perfectly still, green eyes wide, her marigold pinned to her dress, and in that instant, everything shifted. Graham turned to the officiant. "I can't do this." Gasps rippled through the rows. Celeste froze at the altar. "I'm sorry," he said. He turned toward the crowd, toward Lena. "There's something I need to say." He looked directly at Ava. "That little girl is my daughter." The world went silent. Caroline stood, arms crossed but proud. "This is the man I know," she said. "One who owns his mistakes and does better." Graham turned to Lena, voice soft. "I want to be part of your life, both of you. Not as a guest, but as a father, as a partner." Ava stood, uncertain, then ran to him. He knelt, opened his arms. She hugged him. The crowd began to applaud. Not everyone, but enough. Celeste stood frozen, the bouquet trembling in her hands. "You think this is noble?" she whispered. "No," Graham said. "It's just honest." Celeste blinked once. "Then maybe we're both lucky to find this out now." She walked away without another word. Under the oak, the wind whispered. Lena stood slowly. Graham looked at her, still on one knee. Ava turned to her mother. "Can we go home now?" Lena smiled. "We already are." The bridge had once been nothing more than a stretch of rotted wood and rusted bolts spanning the creek between two forgotten neighborhoods. Now it pulsed with new life. Fresh timber, stronger rails, wide enough for strollers and wheelchairs. And hope. Graham stood near the foot of it, sleeves rolled, sawdust in his hair, holding a drill with hands that used to hold nothing heavier than a pencil. Lena arrived carrying 2 paper cups of coffee, her boots streaked with garden soil. Ava skipped beside her, marigold petals stuck in her curls. They looked like they belonged. Graham met them halfway. "You're early," he said. She shrugged. "You're the one with tools now. I figured you'd appreciate punctuality." He took the coffee. Ava tugged his sleeve. "Can we paint my name on the wood later?" "Sure, as long as you let me sign under it. You can be the R, I'll be the A." Lena smirked. "What about the G?" Ava giggled. "We'll save it for last." The dedication ceremony was only hours away, and already people were gathering, neighbors, city officials, kids in school uniforms holding signs that said things like, "Build bridges, not walls." Caroline arrived with a clipboard and a megaphone, her voice cutting clean through the noise. Nobody touched the wet paint. "Yes, I'm talking to you, Councilman." Graham stood at the center of the bridge, looking down at the creek. He remembered drawing things like this years ago, blueprints full of angles and math. But this was different. This was built with something softer, something harder. Lena walked up beside him. "It's good work," she said. "You helped. I held a level and brought coffee. You brought more than that." She didn't answer, but her hand brushed against his. Not holding, just close. "You know," he said, "this was supposed to be a metaphor. It still is." Ava ran up with a scrap of paper and 2 markers. "You promised." He crouched down beside her. Together, they wrote their names on the final plank. Ava, Grace, Lena, and finally, with his daughter watching Graham. The mayor called everyone to attention with a microphone that squealed before it settled. The crowd hushed. Graham stepped forward. His voice was low, steady. "This bridge is more than wood and bolts. It's a reminder that connection matters. That sometimes we break things, relationships, promises, plans." He looked at Lena, at Ava. "But if we're lucky, we get the chance to rebuild." Applause rose around him. Afterward, as the crowd mingled and children darted along the path, Reverend Josiah Blackwell approached. His silver hair shone beneath his straw hat. "You've come a long way, Graham. From a boy sketching cathedrals to a man fixing what matters." Graham nodded, too moved to speak. "God doesn't build homes out of lies," the Reverend added. "And neither should we." That night, Lena invited him over for dinner. Not a grand gesture, just food, a table. 3 plates. Ava helped him cut tomatoes and spilled half a jar of rice. He didn't mind. After Ava had fallen asleep in a pile of stuffed animals, Lena joined Graham on the porch. They sat under the swing they had finally rebuilt together, sipping tea. "Do you think we could ever be us again?" he asked. She looked out at the trees. Why did you leave, really? Not the version you told me, the truth. He exhaled. I thought if I stayed, I'd become someone smaller than what I was meant to be. I was terrified that loving you would be enough. I didn't know if that was good or bad. And now I'd trade every building, every feature article, every dollar in the bank. For one more year with you and her. Lena blinked fast. You broke my heart. I know, not just by leaving, by erasing me. No calls, no letters, just gone. I thought disappearing would be less cruel than saying I was scared. She looked at him, tired and tender. I don't know what this is. If it's nostalgia, or healing, or just loneliness dressed up in old clothes. He turned toward her. Whatever it is, I want to be in it. She didn't speak for a long moment. Then she said, softly, you can stay for breakfast tomorrow. She'd like. That. So would I. The next morning smelled of cinnamon and butter. Graham stood at the stove, flipping French toast with awkward focus. Lena poured juice into sunflower cups. Ava arranged stuffed animals at the table again, a tradition now, careful with the heat. Lena teased, I design commercial buildings, not breakfast. You'll need to master both if you want to keep showing up. Here, that's the plan, Ava beamed. Daddy made real toast. Lena glanced at him. He stiffened slightly. Every daddy was still a jolt, a name he hadn't earned, but didn't want to correct. He slid her a golden slice, dusted with cinnamon, just like your mum used to make. You mean Grandma? Graham laughed. Yes, but your mum too. I stole her recipe. Stole is generous. Borrowed without permission. Ava dunked the toast in syrup, like she was painting a picture. Can we go to the market again today? Graham looked at Lena. She hesitated, then nodded. Okay, but you're in charge of. Mr. Stripey, this time Mr. Stripey never gets lost. Famous last words, Graham said. They laughed. It was small, but it was real. That afternoon, they sat beneath the oak tree behind the house. Ava dozed on Graham's shoulder, cheeks pink from sun, lips sticky with jam. Lena sipped tea slowly. You look like you've done that 100 times, she said. I wish I had. Graham turned to her. I met with my firm this morning, yeah. I stepped away for good. Lena blinked. What? I sold my shares. I'm out, Graham. That was your legacy. No, that was my excuse. And now I want to build something that actually lasts. He looked down at Ava. I want to be there for spelling tests and nightmares and Tuesday mornings. I want to find out if we can build something together. She stared at him. That's a lot. I know, and what if I say no? Then I'll still keep showing up. Because I want her to know I'm here, even if I never get everything I want. She looked at him for a long time. You'll need a job. I was hoping Harmony Garden needed someone we pay in tomatoes and unsolicited opinions. I'll take it. The wind blew softly. The swing creaked. They didn't need to say more. Later that evening, Lena sat at the kitchen table while Martha dried dishes. You were gone longer than usual, her mother said. We stayed for a picnic, with him, with both of them. Martha set the dish. Towel down. I know what it's like to hope a man has changed. And I know what it's like when hope clouds your good sense. I'm not leaping, Mama. I'm watching, listening. Martha studied her. You've got that look again. I never stopped, Mama. Not really, Dad. Then just promise me one thing. When the time comes, don't choose out of guilt. Choose out of love. Lena nodded. I hear you. And she did. More than ever, outside, the swing swayed in the breeze. Graham stood quietly in the yard, looking up at the window with a heart wide open, not waiting for permission, just showing up. One day at a time, the house was quiet in the soft light of early morning. Outside, dew clung to the garden leaves, and the swing moved gently in the breeze, creaking every so often like it remembered who built it. Lena stood at the sink, drying a cup, watching the yard through the window. Ava's rain boots lay kicked over near the porch, a trail of glitter from some long-forgotten art project shimmered faintly in the cracks of the hardwood floor. Graham stirred behind her. He wore the same grey t-shirt from the night before and padded into the kitchen barefoot, his hair a mess, eyes still heavy with sleep. "Morning," he said. Morning. He moved beside her, reached for the coffee pot. They stood in companionable silence, side by side, like they had done this 100 times. She glanced at him. "You didn't have to stay over." "No, but you did. I didn't want to miss pancakes. You didn't make any pancakes. I was hoping that would change if I lingered." She smiled, tired, amused, but not closed off. He leaned against the counter. "You ever think about getting married again?" Lena turned, slowly. "That's not casual breakfast conversation." "I know, but yeah. Sometimes to anyone in particular." Graham smiled softly. "Just one." Lena looked down, suddenly aware of the steady rhythm of her own heartbeat. She dried her hands and moved to the table. Graham followed. He sat across from her, elbows on the wood, eyes steady. "I want to ask you something, and I'm not asking for drama or grand gestures. I'm asking because it feels right, because we've lived through the silence and the noise, and what's left feels honest." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded slip of paper. It wasn't a ring. It was the sketch of the swing. Only this time, 2 adult figures sat on it, a child between them. Lena stared at it. "I don't want to start over," Graham said. "I want to keep going. With you, with her. This house, this porch, this life, it already feels like home to me. So, if you ever think you want to build something with me again, something lasting, I'm here. No deadline, no pressure, just, I'm here." Lena's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. She reached for the sketch, smoothing the folds. "When you left, I stopped imagining futures. I lived in minutes, in groceries and bedtime songs. But lately, I've started seeing things again, little flashes of what could be." She looked at him. "I'm not afraid of trying. I'm just afraid of watching it fall apart in front of her. So Then let's build something slow. We'll use real nails this time." She smiled through the tears. Her hand reached across the table. He took it. Outside, Ava ran into the yard, barefoot and glowing. She spotted them through the screen door and shouted, "Are we making pancakes now?" Graham looked at Lena. "I think that's a yes." By the time they sat down, Ava had covered the table in mismatched napkins and arranged Mr. Stripey at the head like an honored guest. They ate together, sticky fingers and syrup-smudged cheeks. Graham wore a paper crown made of construction paper and tape. Later, while Ava napped in a sun patch on the rug, Lena and Graham sat on the porch. She leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. He rested his hand gently over hers. The swing creaked, the garden swayed, the world felt quiet but not empty. "I used to think home was a place," Graham whispered. "Then I thought it was success. Then I thought it was whatever I had to earn to be worth loving, and now I think it's this." She closed her eyes. What a child asleep inside. A porch swing that needs repainting. 2 hands that fit even after everything. "You finally built something that lasts," Lena said. "We did." The swing rocked. The breeze carried the scent of basil, and old promises made new. And as the sun lowered behind the trees, painting the porch gold, Ava stirred, blinked once, and smiled at the sight of them. Her family dot, finally whole, finally home.